tradition that's been ongoing for quite a while, the presidential address. This will be given by Dr. Marielos Peña Claros, our current president, and I invite Dr. Frans Bongers from the University of Wageningen to introduce Dr. Peña Claros to us all.
Muchísimas gracias. Muy bienvenido a todos. Mientras que ellos están reorganizando esta plataforma, yo sigo hablando en español, pero al rato voy a hablar en inglés. Entonces, casi listo. Eso es la doctora Marielos Peña Claros. And I have to say, I'm going to talk like this. Is it working?
Okay, test.
Okay. So I'm extremely honored, and thank you very much, Miguel, for giving me this opportunity to introduce Marielos Peña Claros to all of you. And I think she does not need an introduction. I think she has been coming to the ATBC meetings for maybe almost 20 years, 20 times at least. So that is a real huge history. She has been in the council for many years, and I'm very happy to see that she is president of the ATBC at the moment. So in fact, there is no introduction needed, but I guess there are one or two persons in the audience that do not know her that well. So for all these people, all these two or three, I will try to give a bit of an explanation on her background. So she's from Bolivia, but she's also becoming a little bit more Dutch every time. And that is part of who she is. She's really super international. So she did her schools in Bolivia, and then she went to the university in Sao Paulo. And after the University of Sao Paulo, she went to do a master's in the United States. And her master's was work on sustainable management of palm heart. And then she went to the Netherlands. And now she speaks all these languages fluently. So that is quite an achievement. I have to say, not many people who come to the Netherlands, country like this size, a bit smaller than the state of Marielos, I think, and that they then after a couple of years speak the language, but she manages all of this. So in the Netherlands, of course, she did some work in Bolivia, and she started her PhD on secondary succession of tropical forest. So some of these great papers that are coming out now, that's where she started a long time ago. She was a little bit, no, I don't see any difference. Another very important thing is after this PhD, she became a co-founder of IBIF. And IBIF is the National Institute of Forestry Research in Bolivia. And that is a super nice institute with a gigantic experimental setup, the largest experimental setup of managed forest, I think, in the world. Maybe I'm exaggerated, but I don't think so. So it's about 840 hectares where they are keeping on managing and measuring all kinds of fantastic issues, and she has had a very important part of that, and part of this time she was director of this institute. And that is now becoming part of these big networks like Rainfor and the TMFO. Keep this in mind, I'm coming back to this one. So, at the moment she's associate professor at Wageningen University. So what does she do? She has 3 main research programs, and that is management of forest resources, sustainable harvesting. It is forest recovery, all these secondary succession things, and how this is related to forest resilience, to climate change, and all these things. And the third one is land use, ecosystem services, how important all this is for mankind. There are quite a number of publications, of course, very exciting, but I'm not going to detail. You can Google scholarly up that. Teaching. Another important issue. So 2 main important courses. I just tell you this to give an idea of the background. So she's doing forest ecology and management, and she's doing sustainable aspects of management. And she had many bachelor's, MSc, PhD students, many of them from the Netherlands, but in fact, most Latinas and Latinos. One way or another, we all connect in that sense. And mostly on human-forest interactions. Super happy to be in the field with students. In this case, I think this one. That is Catarina Jakovac from Brazil. Here the current students, Carolina Levis and Marlene Soriano. Carolina Levis from Brazil, she is from Bolivia. And that is, I think Carolina, is Carolina here? Hi, Carolina, good. Maybe Catarina is also here, I don't know. So, the keywords in that one is interaction, collaboration, science, learning, helping. That is really something that comes back all the time. And another issue that I find very important, and that is what she does, is stimulating diversity. And we biologists, some biologists here in the audience? Yeah? We then think of what kind of diversity? Do we think of gender immediately? No? Okay. So she thinks in gender, international diversity, and disciplinary diversity. This is super important. And yes, also a little bit of biological diversity, of course. So what is she like? You want to know a bit more of the background of this important person here? She likes exploring nature in various ways. She likes riding horses with her daughter Franca. She likes flying around in small Cessnas where 4 people can go in and then exploring Pantanal, the Amazon forest, and I was so happy that I was sitting here taking this picture. So she says, wow, look at that. That's how it works. She likes enlightening people. And once in a while, she doesn't like to drink, but a good caipirinha, and here in Mexico, I'm sure a good margarita, she would be very happy with. And then she likes this cultural diversity, and we think in Carnival of Rio de Janeiro. Yes? But we are talking here about Carnival in Maastricht in the Netherlands. And I think maybe the most important thing that she likes and maybe loves, I would say, that is her super cool family. Here, daughter Franca carrying a sloth, and this other person, maybe some of you have seen him before, carrying this important rainbow boa. Okay, back to the science. 2 very big programs that she was a very fundamental part of and still is, and that's the Robin program, where they look at the role of biodiversity in climate change adaptation. A huge endeavor, 100 researchers from 12 countries, and I can tell you, and there are several people here in the audience, they can assure that's true, that is a challenge. Yeah? But they manage a lot of output, very nice papers, and very nice collaborations. And the second one is the Tropical Forest Managed Forest Observatory Network, the TMFO. I mentioned this earlier. This is something that has been constructed a couple of years ago, and she plays a very important role in that. And this network looks at various aspects of recovery and following up of what is happening when forests are managed. And large parts of the world's forests are being managed, and among others in logging systems. So she is a fighter for logging systems, but that's not the talk of today. So then I come to the last part, in fact, of this introduction, and that is 2 elements. Marielos Peña Claros is connecting people. She is collaborating people all the time. So I know her now almost 20 years, and from the beginning we are, something is happening. It's very exciting. So that's not what I did, huh? And so I have been collaborating a lot with her, and this is a large program that we are collaborating in this forefront, where she is part of this connecting, collaborating network where you work in Brazil and in Mexico and with a lot of other people. And this is really something I think is very important, and it characterizes her. That is what she want to do. And that's the connection to the topic of today. Because the topic of today is about collaboration. And I think she is the perfect person to help us thinking about how we collaborate. And with that, I would like to thank you all. And Marielos, please.
Thank you, Frans, for this very nice introduction. And good afternoon to all of you. It is really amazing to be standing here in front of you. And I have to think, actually, that the first meeting, the ATBC meeting I attended, I was an MSc student back in 1996. And my supervisor, Jack Putz, at University of Florida, he gave his presidential address at that meeting. I couldn't have dreamed that I would be doing the same in Merida 21 years later. It's really an honor to be here. And as president of the ATBC, I really would like to welcome you all to the 54th annual meeting of the Association of Tropical Biology and Conservation. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm certainly looking forward to the coming 4 days. And I hope that there will be plenty of opportunities for all of us to learn, to get inspired, to meet old friends, to make new ones, and to get involved with activities of the ATBC. So, bienvenidos a Mérida. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank the organizing committee. The chair, Dr. Miguel Martinez Ramos, the co-chair, Juan Tupuy, Víctor Parratabla, Dr. Irere Soaz Ortuño, and our guy running the show in the back, Ivan Ortiz, with whom probably most of you have corresponded at least once during the last month. Through you, I also would like to thank the scientific committee, all the students, the intermeeting staff people, and all the volunteers that have helped to put this meeting together. You have done an amazing work. The program that you have put together is really innovative. It's creating many different opportunities for discussion, for interaction, and I think that makes this meeting already very unique. So I would like to thank you all for that, for all the hard work, but mostly I think I want to thank you for putting all that passion that you have put in putting this meeting together. Thank you very much. And with that, I would like to start now with my presentation. As Frans mentioned, I would like to talk today about collaboration in science. More specifically, I would like to talk about collaboration in tropical biology and conservation. The way that we do science has changed tremendously through time. If I think about researchers 150, 200 years ago, I think about natural historians, explorers that often travel on their own to discover the tropics. They observed and they describe patterns, vegetation patterns along altitudinal gradients, for example. They also make collections and discover hundreds of new species. And they interacted with their colleagues by writing letters, exchanging ideas, and in that way moving science forward. Or the other way around, I never know. Yeah. If I think how do we do science nowadays? I don't know what you guys think, but I immediately have to think about my mailbox and all these e-letters that are waiting to get a reply. I think about large data sets, and I think about collaboration. And another big change I think that we have had through time is publication pressure. Nowadays we have much less time to think about the things that we do and that we observed in the field. If we will wait 20 years to publish our work, as Darwin did for the evolution of theory, then probably we will not survive the scientific battle of the fittest if we will wait 20 years. So, a bit of a more personal story to illustrate how things have changed through time. Here I am, 1996, starting the field work of my PhD. And my PhD resulted in a, I think, very beautiful thesis with several chapters, and I had between 1 to 4 co-authors. Actually, the median was 1, maybe the outlier was 4. 16 years later, one of my PhD students, Masha van der Sande, defended her thesis last year. Also a beautiful thesis, had several chapters. The number of authors in her thesis is between 3 to 27 co-authors. Huge change in only 16 years. But obviously, but in the case of Masha, there was a reason for having so many co-authors. I'm not saying that all the research of PhD students need to have so many co-authors, but in the case of Masha, this was the result of the fact that she was working in the framework of the Robin project. The Robin project was an EU-funded project, 4 years long, and with the aim to have a better understanding of the role of biodiversity in climate change mitigation. As Frans already mentioned, we were a group of, there were six Latin American institutions working in the project, 6 Europeans. There were more than 120 researchers participating in this project, and I was leading one of the work packages, the one that actually had to look at the role, had to get a better understanding of the role of biodiversity and climate change using field data and remote sensing techniques. So we were about 80 people in this work package. And I thought, you know, I have done this before. I have managed already large projects before. I come from Latin America, I live in Europe. I can be a very nice link between these two different places. I understand both sides of the story. I was very wrong because it was a huge challenge. How do we actually collaborate? How can we build trust so that we can meet deadlines for the funding agency? You know, the first products needed to be there 1 year after the project started, but we hardly knew each other. How could we share data? How could we share ideas? And how do you manage to involve everybody? How can we actually go ahead and discuss about the type of questions we want to address, the type of data analysis we want to do? How do we write all of this together when our expectations were so different from each other? So we ended up joking for some time that actually all of us had a little Robin inside us because our ideas were so different that, you know, yeah. So it took time. It took time. It took a lot of talking, and it took time to develop this relationship. But I will say that we were successful and that we managed to publish several nice monodisciplinary results, and that we also managed to put together some interdisciplinary work that I think are making a very good contribution to the field. Here I'm just pointing out one of them. This is a recent paper led by Masha van der Sande, in which basically we are suggesting that to have a better understanding of the role of biodiversity on climate change mitigation, we need to use all possible different sets of approaches. In this case, empirical, remote sensing, and modeling. And we are, in this paper, suggesting what kind of proxies we can use to link these different fields, that we can use to measure diversity and carbon using different approaches, but are allowing us to communicate between them. Okay, now I want to switch a bit gears and I want to talk about trends in the number of authors in tropical ecology. And for this this is something I did together with Dr. Ellen Feist. She's a bibliometrician at our university. What basically we did was the following. We were interested to see if there was really an increasing number of authors in our field. This is something that has been done already for many different fields, ecology, but also in terms of biomedicine. This is really something that people are looking at very much. So we went ahead and selected 10 different ecological journals. And then we included Nature and Science, and the idea in the selection was that we included a range of a set of journals that range in their impact factor. And then we went ahead and selected 20 years of articles from 1996 to 2016, and we focused on tropical ecology. So all these articles, about 7,000 of them, had the words tropical ecology either on the title, on the abstract, or as keywords. And then we use Scopus for the analysis. And because Scopus does something a bit different than Web of Science, I will be using a bit of different terms. So rather than to talk about the journal impact factor, which is the term that is used by Web of Science, I will be talking about the CITE score of journals. It's a bit calculated, a bit different, but it's the same kind of thing. And then I will be talking about the field-weighted citation index, which is actually an index that allows comparing among different research fields, in this case just ecology, but also allow us to compare papers that have been published in different years, in different moments in time. So it's a bit of a more fair comparison. So with this information, this is some of the results that we got. So here in the y-axis you have the average number of authors through time, and the yellow line is including all the all the articles of all these ecological journals. For example, the journal Ecology includes some articles are related to tropical ecology, but the rest is really much broader. So that's the blue line, that's the red line. And then if you see the field of tropical ecology, you say the same trend, that the number of authors increases over time. Then we went ahead and looked a bit more in detail to the different journals. And here I'm just showing some of them, just for clarity. The red one is our beloved Biotropica. And you see that in all cases, obviously, you see an increase in the number of authors through time. Then we went and plotted on the top of this Nature. And you see as well an increase, quite some variation, but you also see an increase. But then the scale is something very different. So here we were talking between this scale not going even to 10, and here we have a very different scale. So then what we did is I did a linear regression. I set up a linear regression analysis on this data per journal and calculated the slope of each of that. That gives me the rate of increase in number of authors through time. And we related that value, so the increase in co-authorship through time, with the CITE score of 2015 for each of these journals. So each of these points represent a journal. And then what you see is that the rate of increase is faster in journals that have a higher impact factor. Then I we also were curious about what is the influence of the number of authors. And this is something that people have looked in many different research fields already, but I was interested to look specifically to tropical biology. And what we did, so here we have papers with 1 author, 2, and so on, 6 to 10, and so on. And this is the average field-weighted citation index. And again, what you see is that the articles with more authors are more cited than articles with less authors. Yeah? So here it's me with the articles of my PhD thesis. Here is Masha with her articles. Yeah? So then we know that we are collaborating. I mean, I have shown you the trends for that. It's very clear. So then the question arises, with whom are we collaborating? And how is that collaboration changing through time, if at all? So here we have the percentage of collaboration for different types of collaborations. Through time. So percentage of collaboration through time. What we see is an increase in the international collaboration, and we see a decrease in single author paper. And we see, interestingly enough, also a decrease in the institutional collaboration. So people from different departments at the same institution working together. That is happening less through time. Interestingly enough, the collaboration at the national level is sort of constant through time. So we do more international collaboration, and we keep up some of our national collaboration. Yeah? So in general, we are going much more international. Another way to look at this is to look at what we call collaboration nodes, which are basically networks of collaborations. And what we did is we focused for this just on Biotropica, because I was very curious to see who is doing the work together with whom in our association. And I will show you the results of 2 time spans. The first one, I hope you can see this, is the network for Biotropica from 1996 to 2000. Yeah? You see here the different organizations and how they are linked together. So organizations with the same similar color, they work more closely together than organizations with different colors. And what you see is that, and we included for doing these networks only universities that had, or institutions that had at least 3 articles published during that period of time in Biotropica. Yeah? And what you see is that, yes, it's quite broad. I mean, you had the Smithsonian, you had Berkeley, you have Stanford, Utah, the University of Florida, playing kind of, I think, important role at that time. And then we go very quickly to 2012 to 2016. And this is the network of collaboration that we have in the last 5 years for Biotropica. Huge changes. See, and you also start seeing much more organizations outside the states. You see here the Consejo Nacional de Investigación. UNAM was somewhere here as well, but I lost it. Here, see? UNAM is here. So I think that through time, we see that there are more institutions participating actively. I think the Shannon diversity has gone up. There is not really a lot, there is many different institutions participating, and there are no really dominant institutions. It is a very complex network, and individual institutions are collaborating with larger number of institutions. So it's not IMPA just collaborating to say something with the University of Florida, is collaborating with many other institutions as well. And I think that's a very cool thing to see. You could ask yourself, well, why are we making our lives so difficult? Why do we want to collaborate? I think there are many reasons for that. Some people will say that one reason for that is that our impact factor will increase as well, because you publish with more authors, that raises the number of citations, you can get access to much more high-profile journals. I'm kind of a naive and an optimistic person that try to think that people are not doing collaboration just because of that. I think that people are doing collaboration for the other reasons, mainly for the other reasons that I will share with you. And this list is obviously not exhaustive. One of the reasons is that efforts needed to move science forward require concerted efforts. And an example for this, think about the human genome effort. It wouldn't have been possible to reach where we are now without the collaboration of many different institutions. Something maybe much more closer to us is the tribe plant trait database, which many different researchers putting data into this database has allowed to ask many different and innovative questions in terms of the functioning of our systems. Another reason is that there is a need for a multi or interdisciplinary approach to address global societal changes. Just a quick example is obviously the reports of IPCC, which is based on research and large groups of people working on these reports and synthesizing information. Oh, and here this was an example I wanted to show to illustrate that collaboration also allows to ask novel questions. And my example for this is the work of one of our PhD students, Carolina Levis, who has looked at what is the proportion of domesticated species that we have in the Amazon. So she used permanent sample plots, but she also used archaeological data and ethnographic data, ethnobotanical data, to put this study together. And she found that, yes, we are moving. and she found that there is really a gradient of domestication throughout the Amazon. Carolina will be talking a bit more about this on Tuesday afternoon in the session of multiple forest management. So if you want to hear a bit more, please go to her talk. Another reason is that we need to scale up and combine large data sets to come to generalizations in ecology. And there are many examples for this. I only took one of them, and this is the example of the study done by Roel Brienen back in I'm getting dizzy here. In 2015, in which he looked at how the annual change in net above ground biomass and how that changed through the Amazon. If you will think, and here he represented the different plots that are in the different sites in the Amazon. If we will do the same research and we will pick up this site, we will get a very different answer if we will pick another site depicted here in the green line. So this is the advantage of putting all this data together, that we can get a more general kind of response and understanding. So here are the reasons, again, that I think are behind our willingness to collaborate. So how do we do it then? How do we collaborate with each other? And this is going to be collaboration in action, and I will be presenting the results of a survey that I did. So when I was thinking about what to talk about today, I thought, well, let's talk about collaboration in science, and actually what I want to do is to know what does the membership of the ATBC think about collaboration in science. So I was having these big plans of putting together a questionnaire with multiple choice questions that will go to the whole membership, and all of you will answer to me, and I will have all this amazing data to present to you today. But as many times it happens to us, the time was very short. So what I would like to do now is to ask for your help, and if you could stand up, if the statement that I will show in the screen, and if you can read the screen, corresponds to you, yeah? So I really need that you stand up. And this is true collaborative research in action. So let's see if we can do it. So the first question is, please stand up if you are a council member of the ATBC. Could you please stand up? Okay, thank you. Could you stand up if you are an ATBC member? Great. Welcome again. Great to see you all. Thank you. Now that you get into the practice, let's do the more questions that I wanted to ask you guys. So please stand up if you are an early career researcher. So who are the young ones? Only early career Frans and Laurens. Thank you. Thank you. Could you stand up if you are a mid-career researcher? Okay, thank you. And this last question will hurt a bit. Could you stand up if you consider yourself a late career researcher? Okay. Thank you. So now could you stand up, please could you stand up if you have collaborated on scientific papers from, so the big majority of the room, thank you. And you can just stay up, sorry, just stay up. So now, if you have collaborated on, can you stay standing, if you have collaborated on scientific papers with more than 5 co-authors? So 2, 3, 4, sit down. Okay, so big numbers in this room, great. And if you have collaborated with more than 20 authors? Okay, look at this. Thank you. We are coming to the end. I'm just curious who has led an article with more than 15 authors? Who has been the leading author? Okay, look around. Look around them, remember who they are. They may be the ones that you want to meet in the coming days. And then, can you stand up if you have led an article with more than 15 authors and you are in an early stage of your career? So early stage researchers with more than 15 authors. You guys are our leaders for the future. Thank you. So, a part of this collaborative research, what I also did is I sent to 102 colleagues of mine a survey with 10 questions, and 57 of them answered this survey. And this is a bit of the statistics in that regard. So 98% of them had already participated in a collaborative effort. 60% had led such an effort. 50% were coming from the north, 50% were coming from the south. 18% of them defined themselves as early career, 37 as mid-career, and 46 as late career. And I asked them several questions. One of them was, describe your experience with collaborators. And these are the answers. So people could choose between saying my collaboration was good, inspiring, learnful, time-consuming, frustrating, conflictive, or others. And people could choose more than one of these options. Yeah? And luckily, most of people consider their collaboration experience as good, inspired, and learnful. But obviously, it's difficult, and people also say that it was time-consuming, it was frustrating, and it was conflictive. Yeah? What struck me was that 68% of the people that answered 68% of the people who answered the questionnaire use 3 or more terms to describe their experience as collaboration, in collaboration. So collaboration is not simple. You can go through all of this with your collaborators. You could have sometimes projects that are always good, inspiring, learnful. Some of them are really frustrating and conflictive all the time. But what is much more often, I think, is that we go through the whole array of options. And I really hope that it goes from here to here, and not the other way around. The other question I asked was, what are the positive aspects of collaborations? And people said, well, you know, I managed to answer novel questions. I got insight to different approaches, to different disciplines. It allowed me to do interdisciplinary research. It allowed me to collaborate with leading researchers. It allowed me to learn a lot, to exchange ideas, to improve the quality of the science that I'm doing. So people were really very positive in that regard. But also, I asked them, what are the negative aspects of collaborations? And people say it was time-consuming, that was number one. People say that there were some issues in terms of contribution of the different co-authors. You know, how do you manage, how do you make it possible that everybody contributes and in an equal amount? There were some personal relation issues and so on. And what I did is I divided these questions into groups. I look at it, what were the negative aspects that people were indicating if they were coming from the north and if they were coming from the south. And here are some of the results. So people found it in general time-consuming. People indicated, I think more people coming from the south indicated there were issues with the contribution of co-authors. How do make sure that everybody contributes? And what is an enough contribution to be co-author of a paper? How do we foster this contribution? And how can we be as inclusive as possible and give opportunities to people? And obviously people were saying also, you know, there are co-authors that are not actually contributing anything at all. On the other side, there were also people, only from the south, saying, well, you know, my contribution just disappears in the round of reviews that these manuscripts are going. So you see the contradiction when say, well, you know, they don't contribute, but on the other side, these contributions may be just disappearing in the round of comments. Some of the other issues that people were indicating was that there were these issues related to local versus global issues. Because it could be that when you put your data together and you do a more general kind of study, the global results that you get are not really fitting to your local reality, to your study site. Maybe the patterns that you see at the global level are actually completely the other way around than what you will find in your particular site. And that creates a kind of conflict, more so when people at the local sites are actually doing their work to answer conservation questions. So, for example, if you look at the relation between, what is the role of fragmentation on the speed of recovery of secondary forests, and you find that there is no relationship at the global scale, but you know that in your site, that is the crucial aspect. It creates a conflict because the message that you will be passing to your policymakers is going to be different if you use the global results. So those are the things I think that we need to take into account when we talk about collaboration. Data sharing is a whole issue on itself. I think data sharing, making data available is becoming much and more and more the standard also for our field. And I think that there are many different ways to deal with that, but it creates kind of a sense of conflict because people that have been looking for the money, doing the field work, do have problems that this data will be publicly available because sometimes that is the way that they can justify to funding agencies to get more funds. But if they don't have any more control to the data, how do you do then? So there are really issues that I think we need to talk very openly when we are collaborating with each other. So I also asked for recommendations for successful collaborations. And people say that it helps to have clear agreements for data sharing, for communication, for authorship. Some people went so far to say, well, let's have really an agreement, a written agreement that which we use to base our relationship. People say that it's important to have the right attitude, to build personal relations, to have good and effective communication, to work together from the start, to have a strong leadership, not a strong leadership in the sense of the ego and the alpha male, female, but more the strong leadership of being somebody open, that is inclusive, that is willing to listen to what the other says, but also is able to set clear deadlines. It helps to be aware of differences and to promote involvement. But each of these aspects is really much more complicated than the simplified version. And I use the example of the right attitude. What is right attitude? People say right attitude will be being open-minded, inclusive, interested in the other, have a positive attitude, tons of energy, be transparent, be open to opinions and new ideas, be honest, be empathic, have tolerance. So it's a huge type of descriptions. And we know, collaborations is not easy, but it's also a lot of fun. I also ask people to say what were the aspects that hinder collaborations. So obviously you can put the previous slide in negative and you will get this, but I included here some additional things. So lack of clarity in terms of expectations, the outcomes, the data sharing, personal relationships that don't work well. Several people mentioned that one of the issues was the limited funding for face-to-face meeting, and that stresses the importance of building personal relationships. In the ideal case, we will collaborate and sit together and think about things being in the same room, but the reality is that there is very little money to do that. Some of the things that some people mention as well is that normally the researchers from the north are the ones coming to the south to collaborate, but very rarely happens the other way around. So I like this idea. Let's invite our colleagues to our universities, and that would be something different. And people say that there is a large difference in knowledge and skills, and I think that calls for the need to have much more, consider the need of having much more training in our collaborations. Maybe it will be easier for new generations. At school in the Netherlands, at least in the school of my daughter, they do work a lot in groups. So when I was preparing this talk, I asked her, and I got a very quick answer and a very straightforward answer, and that doesn't happen very often. She said to me that the rules are: be nice with each other, agree on the task that each will do, change tasks if someone has difficulties or is tired of doing the same, and talk, and talk. So maybe there is future in the new generation. It will be much more easier to do this. Okay, I wanted to go and show you some examples of networks, and this will be for most of you a bit redundant, but I wanted to mention that one of the first networks, at least in the forest ecology part of our field, was the network of large permanent plots that the Center for Tropical Forest Science put together at the beginning of the 90s. And the interesting aspect of the CTFS network is that they have a protocol that is followed by all partners all around the tropics, but now at this moment also in temperate forests. So they have the same protocols, they manage the data in the same way. And since then there have been also other networks being created. One of them is the Rainfall Network, the ATDN network, TMFO, and the Second Fork network. I think the common thing about all these networks is that they are actually using existing data and bringing people together to work on specific questions. So that's something a bit different because the protocols are different. The original idea to put these plots together was different as well. And obviously there are thousands of other national collaborations. I just want to mention the one in Brazil, the PPBio, which is, I think, a very exemplary network of gaining knowledge on biological diversity in Brazil. So here I want to show an example on how to collaborate that we have been using in the Second Fork network. The Second Fork network is the network to study secondary forests. It includes about 45 65 researchers working in about 45 sites. And basically what we are using is this is just an example. There are thousands of other options to collaborate with large number of researchers. But what I want to stress this is, so what is done is the outline of the manuscript is prepared by a core group. This outline with a small introduction, the questions, a bit of how the data is going to be analyzed, goes to the whole group and is discussed via Skype. That feedback is included, and the core group works on the analyzing the data and writes a short summary, a short document with the main results that there were found. That is again sent to the whole group, and these results are discussed in several Skype sessions to get the feedback of the people at that level. So sometimes questions are changed, analysis need to be redone, but that's the idea of having this moment of reflection. So that information is taken into account, and the core group will write the first draft that goes then to the members for comments. And then for that we use a standard format, and we get a PDF only of the manuscript with a number of lines, and basically we ask people to include the comments on the Excel file. And basically this is a pain because you cannot include it directly on the PDF, you need to type it on it. But basically you indicate the line, what is the comment, if the comment is major or minor, and you also put your name. So when that is taken, so then using that information, the final version is prepared and sent to the journal, and the manuscript that is sent to the journal and the Excel file is sent back to the co-authors. And this Excel file looks like this. So it's basically a file. In this case, it was a paper that we're still working on, I think, or is published, I don't know. In any case, the core group received 650 comments, 650 comments put on these things. And then the nice thing about using this format is that the core group can indicate how they have dealt with those comments. Did they take it into account or not? Why not? And so on. So it sort of creates a bit of more transparency of how people are dealing with your comments. And this sort of, Excel forms and so on is used again with the comments when the manuscript comes back from the journal and so on. Yeah? So I think this is maybe one way, a more simple way to deal with it. But I think we need to look for other options, to look and really use the technology that is available there to facilitate our work. And I want to highlight one option that I was really very enthusiastic about. And this is an example for the future, and it's based on the Ocean Earth Index framework. And this is an experience that is being presented recently by Londres in Nature, Ecology and Evolution. And basically what they have is here, they have the easy of reproducibility going from more difficult to easier, and how much time, and the easy of collaboration from less to greater. Basically this is a network of people. They are monitoring how much resources are taken out from the ocean and what is the impact of that, and the aim is that with this information they can provide a scientific basis for taking management decisions. And basically they describe here that at the beginning, they used Excel files, they used a lot of emails and so on, and it took a lot of time for collaboration. And basically in the paper, they describe how they have moved from data preparation and using R and using the R Studio. And nowadays they're working with GitHub to have all the information there. So the data, the R scripts, the changes in the R scripts, the changes in the manuscript, but also the changes, the email traffic that goes. Because these are 200 sites that are collecting data every single year, and the data needs to be collected in a similar way to be able to really monitor what's going on. So maybe this is the future in our collaborations, or how to facilitate our collaborations maybe. Okay, so the ATBC. I think one of the roles, and I think Robin already mentioned, is to facilitate networking and collaboration. This is the strategic plan of the Association of Tropical Biology and Conservation, and these are the 5 strategic foci. I have been practicing this word the whole time, foci, of the strategic plan. And if you will read through it, communication and networking is really a key component for the association. And to facilitate that, we are trying to create more and more options for networking. One of that is, for example, the networking of young researchers. And today we started a new activity which is called the Mentoring Circle, being led by Sarah DeVolt, in which students are being coupled with mentors and mentees, and we are going to follow this trajectory for the next whole year. There are several training events, as you have seen in the program, and I think the meeting here in Mérida is a great example of opportunities for discussions and networking. So we have the town hall event where we will going to be discussing thematic chapters. Again, I invite you to go on Tuesday after the plenary session. There are several side events. During lunch, for example, Tuyen is organizing a workshop on how to collaborate between Latin American researchers with African researchers. There is the scientific cafe. There we are going to have lunch together. There is the cocktail. There are the parties. So there are many different options to collaborate. So I would say, take the opportunity and meet your friends again, but make sure to meet new people. And also, although I thought there were not that many late career researchers, but let's grab the mid-career researchers and approach young researchers. A poster session is a fantastic option to do so. So I would like to ask 2 more questions for you. All the young researchers presenting posters, could you please stand up? Great. So all the rest know who they are, so please go and visit the posters during the poster sessions. This is very important. The other thing that I would like to do is I would like to ask the mentees to stand up, the mentees that are participating of the mentoring circle. Look at them because they have a very difficult homework for Wednesday. Please sit down. What they're going to do, the work is literally, they need to meet somebody that they don't know yet. Hopefully they will be able to meet their scientific hero. And what they need to do is with our help, they need to interact with them, they need to talk, and they need to take a selfie with you guys. So if they ask for a picture, don't be shy, it's part of the homework. And with this, I would like to thank LMFES for the bibliometric data, my collaborators throughout the years, and all of you for helping during the presentation and for your questions. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Any question? I don't know if there is time for questions either.
So I'm invited to be the moderator to ask questions, to invite questions for Marielos. That's good. So, who? Mentees first?
No.
Yes. I'm one of these older people, so my ears.
Is this working? Yes. Okay.
So I really need this.
I just had a quick question about that workflow of collaborating, and I wanted to know how big the core groups generally tended to be.
I didn't understand.
I didn't also understand. Sorry.
The size of the core group who did a lot of the writing in the collaboration process.
Yeah, I think the size of the core group varies. Yeah, varies quite a bit. I would say that it's most between one and 4 people max. You know, I think at least in the collaboration with the second 4, I think we are between you guys. It has been normally between 3 to 4 people. In other collaborations that I have had, it was a team between, I think, up to 5, 6 people, just to facilitate things.
Okay, that was a very interesting question. The next one.
But obviously, I'm sorry, but obviously the need of a core team will depend on how large is the group with whom you are collaborating. I mean, if you are putting a paper together with the 2 of you, the 3 of you, the Excel file and a core team, all of that is obviously not needed, but I think the need of maybe more ways of techniques, of tricks, or maybe technology increases as the size of your group increases.
Thank you. So that was a question of the mentees. Now the young career people. No, Lawrence, you're not part of that, eh? Anybody else out there? Mid-career?
I think everybody is ready for the cocktail.
Here. Sir.
It's very kind of sad seeing that intra-institutional collaboration is declining, while international collaboration, outside institution collaboration is increasing. And I don't find a reason for this decline of intra-institutional collaboration other than internal policies of each institution. I mean, just take an example in my institution. If I do any number of papers with different ratios of first authors, corresponding authors, and just one of the bunch, it's much profitable internally to do it outside my institution than within my own institution. Is that a common pattern that you can comment on?
Yeah, thank you for providing some clarification for this trend that we didn't really understand very well either. You know, I don't know, it may be that there is a policy with that, but if I look at my own collaborators, I tend to collaborate much more outside Wageningen University than with my colleagues. I mean, I do collaborate with colleagues at the university, but it's less than than international collaborators, and I'm not sure what is the reason for that. Actually, it may be in our cases we are just a relatively small university. And if we want to collaborate with other forest ecologists, it's basically collaborating with that group of people with whom we drink coffee every day, because there are not that many other forest ecologists at the university. So I don't also have a very clear explanation for that. Could be related to the policy, could be related maybe to the funding. Then it's better to have collaborators outside your own institution to get more to get funded. It would be nice looking at it in more detail.
All right, I see 2 people waving there.
Okay.
Good.
One? Yes.
Hi, Marielos. This is Jorge here.
Yeah, Jorge.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm curious. Did you notice any cultural pattern in your study? I noticed that you tried to divide people by coming from the south and the north. And I'm really curious about the division, but that's not my question. But I think that there are societies and peoples who are more open to collaboration than others as part of their daily everyday life. So I don't know if you notice anything like that, like, for example, big differences between countries, both from the south or from the north, or something like that.
Yeah, I will need to look at the data. Thank you, Jorge, for the questions. I will need to look at the question a bit more, and I think it may be possible to do such a comparison for few countries only because of the sample. I mean, I got quite some responses from Mexico and Brazil, for example. But other Latin American countries, although they are there, they were not really represented. And I obviously have a neotropical bias, because I had very few people from Asia, or very few people working in Africa. But probably there will be a difference. I think a bit the idea that I have was that there was actually more the kind of comments were more similar, actually. You know, if you look, for example, at data, if you look at what are the positive, how people will describe their collaboration. You know, this first graph, inspiring, learnful, frustrating. I look at this north-south difference, and there wasn't really much difference. There was no difference in that sense. There was a bit of difference if you would look at this at the stage of the career of the people. You know, but I think to see this more detailed thing, I would like to expand. It would have been better if I would have done the big plan that I had first, you know, to have a bit of a much broader geographical distribution for that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, now I'm jumping down. I'm coming to you. I see here 1, 2, 3. Okay, start with 1. The lady first.
Hi, Marielos. What a great talk. I was wondering, I didn't see any networks in your list of networks that weren't ones where it was sort of like people collaborating with like people, so groups of people who have plot networks, or and so I'm curious, thinking about the message or the theme of this meeting in terms of having social and biological aspects, whether you looked at any collaborations that were sort of multidisciplinary in that sense, really across disciplines.
Yeah, that's a great question, Corinne. Thank you. I didn't look at it specifically, but I think it is very important to look at them because they do work in a different way. And it depends a lot on what is really the type of project. If you look at the Robin project that I was illustrating, we had as well social scientists, and we have people coming more from the natural science. And the first thing that you need to learn is really how to communicate with each other, because the terms are completely different. And what you understand for diversity will be something completely different than for the other people. So I think those interdisciplinary projects, those are really very interesting to look at. And there is quite some research on them as well, you know, how they are organized, what kind of aspects are important to make this type of collaboration work. So there is some research on that. I think much more than the research done on how you do more monodisciplinary research and what kind of things you need to do that. Did I answer more or less?
Okay, here, another question.
Okay, Mario, thanks for your call to collaborations, which I wholeheartedly support. I would caution a bit against putting too much faith on bibliometric data. But my point is, you raised some problematic issues in between the lines. And the question I'm going to ask is somewhat provocative, but I think it's an important issue, and I think you will understand what I mean. My question, the answer to which would be very important for early, mid, and late career scientists is, what do I do to become author of a publication without actually contributing anything?
Well, yeah, thank you. So what do you do to become author without contributing? Yes. Well, that's a tricky question. I think this is a question that can be answered in many different ways. And it's tricky, and I think it's tricky for us when we are put into that situation, but it's also much more tricky when it's a very young researcher put into that situation. You know, how do you cope with that? I don't think that there should be co-authorship when you really don't do anything to put this paper together. How much is sufficient to become a co-author, I would say that should be the next question to ask. What is sufficient? I ask a researcher who does a lot of meta-analysis, more using a lot of meta-analysis, and he's putting all these different databases together, and I ask him, how much data does somebody, how do you offer co-authorship for that? And he said, well, it depends a bit on what kind of data the person is bringing. If it's rare and a lot, then yes. If it's rare and little, no. There are no black and white replies. And this was one of the things that we discussed and we talk a lot within also projects like the Robin project or other collaborations that we're doing. How much is enough? And I think that's a very tricky question. I don't think that people that don't do anything should be a collaborator. I'm not, yeah.
Thank you very much, Marielos. Yeah. So there were all these other questions out there, but I am very sorry. We have to go to the museum. And so I think that is a great idea. And maybe was there some tequila waiting in the museum as well? Maybe, that's good. So what I would like to do, Marielos, stay here, please. Big applause for Marielos, please.